Good evening, everybody, and welcome again to Coach's Corner. We've got a great live show for you this evening. A topic that seems to have hit a nerve with quite a few people in terms of I'd really like to hear what you have to say because I've run into this problem myself. And that being maintaining a positive attitude on the field when you're training or when you're coaching somebody who's having trouble with maintaining a positive outlook. And these can come from a number of different sources, but we're going to really get into it tonight. I want to thank Sadb for being our producer this evening, and hopefully she's going to join us as well with her comments because she's got some great ones with this topic. We have Duke Brannos joining us, and Viscountess Bess is also here with us, and we're looking forward to getting into this topic. It's a great one. We realize this is one of those shows that we may have bitten off more than we can chew for getting through this exhaustively in one episode. But we're going to do the best we can, and we definitely want to hear from you, our listeners, issues you may have had. We're going to cover a bunch of things that we've experienced, both as fighters and as coaches. Maybe we'll touch on one that you resonate with, but if not, please post up a comment. Let us know, and we'd love to go over it and propose some good solutions for how to do it, whether or not it's you yourself that are struggling with maintaining a positive attitude, or whether it's you're helping somebody else through it. So with that, let's get into it. Welcome, everybody. It's great to have you here.
Thank you.
Okay, let's go right to it. I think in looking at what causes your positive attitude or your positive outlook to suddenly be damaged, those things can come from internal self-driven factors, whether that be a low self-confidence, all kinds of things that can happen just inside of you. And then there's external ones, things that happen outside that cause your mental outlook to be negative. Let's put it straight out. Maybe you're having a bad day. Maybe it's an opponent that's just something's not going right with them. All kinds of stuff. So I think with the biggest one, at least from what I've seen and what I've experienced with other people that have struggled with it, a lot of it comes from internal. They don't live up to their own expectations. They have a will to be good, which is good, but then they come down hard on themselves when they don't do as well as they expect. This can also come through with things like just outright nervousness and anxiety. Depression can enter into the picture very, very quickly, and that can come from, I have my experience at work sucks. I hate it. I don't like being there. I don't like being around those people. And when they come to a practice or when they come to training, they bring all of that baggage right along with them, and they kind of have this residual sort of influence that they bring in, and that could be a home life, it could be work life, it could be relationship stuff, could be many of those things that can be brought in. And one of the things I wanted to lead with this episode as a solution to that is, you could call it compartmentalizing, but it's a good thing when you go to a practice. And I had the same thing at my dojo. We start off a class, I ring a bell, we have a short bow in, and we start to do warm-ups, and that's a time to clean all the garbage that you brought in your mind. Let it go, set it down like baggage, and set it aside and focus on what you're doing right now. Nothing's more important from the rest of your day than what you're doing right at the moment. And I think that's something you need to practice. It's about turning off those stressors, learning to do it on a regular basis. And that stressor can actually come over into, okay, now it's crown tournament morning. Your nerves you're all wound up. You've got all of this input you've been juggling around, and you want to perform, but your body, and now you need to shut your eyes and say, I'm clearing all that out. I'm letting it go. And I'm right here. I'm right now. And that's all. So maybe we could start with that point. Anybody have something to toss in there on that? No, you're muted, Brannos.
I think I'd learned how to do this. So I think, it's a great point. You get the opportunity. The thing you want to do is go to practice. You actually already succeeded by going, right?
Mm-hmm. Success
And
number one.
Success number one. You know, get the feed of winning, because you literally met a micro goal of getting to practice. So now don't throw that away. Celebrate that you're there, that people you know are there, that you have the opportunity to learn, and you know, the hard piece is separating your day from the time that you have an opportunity to work on something you want to do, right?
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, sometimes it's hard going to practice, but realistically, you're doing it because you wanted to do it before, and you're there and you're doing it. So I think a big piece is, you know, a lot of us are like, you know, we don't celebrate the fact that we are still having and given the opportunity to even do this kind of stuff. So you have to dive into that, because every positive thing you give yourself is a little bit of dopamine that comes in and says, hey, look at me. The more confident you are, that, you know, as you're like, hey, look, I'm knocking down all my goals tonight, the faster you are able to build even more positive things. So if you come in with a negative field, it's very hard to get past that.
Mm-hmm.
So that's true. Good comment on this I want to share. Just showing up gives you access to everyone else at practice who is your community for support that can often help you get over that hump, that next step of feeling a little bit better and past that negativity. Your support network there can help pull you up. So that's more reasons that showing up is already winning.
Yep.
That's true. You know, and one thing I also want to give into people's minds is when you show up and the attitude you walk in with is contagious, it will transmit and it will reflect. So imagine you've got a practice of 15 people and each one of them shows up depressed, dragging their sorry butt in there thinking, oh, here we go. I'm going to get bruised up for another hour and a half. Imagine the feel in that room versus having some people, everybody that walks in the door says, I'm excited to be here. I decided I wanted to make it happen. I made it happen. I'm eager to get in my armor. I'm grateful that I can get in my armor, because there are people that can't. Either they're injured or they, you know, all kinds of things can stop you from being able to go and do that. And so be grateful that you have overcome all of those things and are able to enjoy it. And if you have that spirit in you, you walk into a room of 10 or 15 people that have all got that, reflecting that positivity back at you. It's an amazing thing. To me, and I've been in practices that have been both, and tournaments that have been both sides. And it is a night and day difference of the energy that you transmit as well as the energy you receive.
Anybody who questions that only needs to look at a small practice. Say there's 3 or 4 of you at practice. And everybody's like, there's 3, 4 of us. Do we want to get into? All it takes is one person to get into armor. One person says, you know what, I'm going to pull my armor on. And the next thing you know, somebody else is like, whoa, okay. And the next thing you know, you got 4 fighters who are in armor who at first were saying, oh, I don't know. So that's sort of like the fighter contagion. And I would like to say, going into this, when I'm talking about maintaining a positive attitude tonight, I won't be talking about, oh, look at me, I'm Pollyanna. Everything is terrific. I have flowers growing off of my swords because everything is just so perfect. Everything is so wonderful. Oh, yay, this is just terrific. I don't mean that. When I'm talking about it tonight, what I will be thinking about is a positive in that, what have I done right? God help me. Yet again, Brannos was right, but it took me for a really long time to get there. Like it always does, because I always think I'm stupid. But then I come around. But at the beginning, like for several months, I think I can't do the thing, or I don't do the thing. A positive attitude can be something as simple as, it can be, what am I doing right? One of the things that Brannos espouses, and I myself am trying to look at is, tell me some things I'm doing right. Like not you tell me, but me tell me some things I'm doing right. But you can ask others. God help me. Last week I went to practice and not a goddamn thing went right. I got in the car, I pulled in the parking lot. I didn't have my shield with me. I'm like, well, shit. And then somebody said, well, Bess, you can borrow a buckler. And I didn't have a half gauntlet to use a buckler. I'm like, well, Jesus Christ. And then I barely scraped up an elbow. And I'm like, this whole thing sucks. I ate everything. Nothing is good. I ate this whole thing. I want to go home. This is stupid. I'm using a buckler I've never used before. It's a center grip. I don't use a center grip. I'm cold and I'm mad at myself. But I also try to do something that we've talked about other times here on Coach's Corner is change what we call victory conditions. So normally in the normal course of events, I would have said, tonight I'm going to practice and I want to work on X, Y, or Z things. Z because I'm Canadian. And these are the things that I want to work on. Instead, what I had to flip in my mind was, I literally said, tonight I'm going to practice. This is not going to be a good night. I'm going to practice what it's like working through an awful night where nothing is going right for me, but I'm still here and I'm still doing it. Mm-hmm. And then I could look at it and I'd say, my footwork didn't totally suck tonight. That's me finding a positive thing. It didn't totally suck. So those were things so when I'm talking about a positive thing, those are things that you can switch. You'll notice at no point did I ever go Pollyanna on myself last week. I was an idiot because I left my shield behind. I was stupid because I'd unpacked my armor bag and I didn't put my stuff back in. I was using equipment that I didn't like and it made me cross. But I still managed to maintain the positive attitude because I could say to myself, well, I'm still here. I'm still doing it. And I'm practicing having a sucky night because some days we're just going to have sucky days and we have to know how to deal with them.
That's right. And part of the formula of victory and success is to adapt to change, adapt to the unexpected. Maybe you're at Penzic and your shield breaks or it's busted up and it's like, all right, battle time's in 10 minutes. Guess what? You're going to grab whatever you need to get what you get your hands on and you're going to go fight with it. And figure, I got to figure this out. Suddenly I'm in the middle of a battle and, all kinds of things can happen that way. Same thing in a tournament. You might think I'm going to do well and you lose and it's a double limb. It's like, I'm one loss away. I got to change my approach. I got to adapt and adjust. And so when your brain and body and the mind leads the body, when your mind gets used to adapting and adjusting, then when an unexpected obstacle comes up, you're just in the habit of, okay, what do I got to do to get over this, around it, through it, past it? You'll have that mental flexibility that makes it much more doable and easier to adapt to. Go ahead. There's a comment that was really, really good that I want to pop up here real quick. And this is from Kimberly. She says, I'm thinking on some level as a leader at my practice, it translates the way that way too. I need to set the tone for newer fighters. Absolutely. Whether you have some sort of rank or not, whether you're a knight or royal peer or not, if you have a bit more experience, maybe 6 months more than the other people that are there, you will be looked up to as an example. People will echo your mannerisms, your behavior, the way your presence. They will start to copy it. So it's very important if you have that mentoring role, and don't assume you don't, just because you don't think, well, I'm not a knight or I'm not you do. Everybody does. Even people that are at the low end of the ladder, they still will influence the rest of practice. So yeah, that was a great point that I wanted to point out. So that was a good comment. I wanted to do it before we went on. So anyway, continuing on.
So real quick on that note, and this goes for everyone down the road. You don't have to be the leader at practice because you remember, who lifts those leaders at practice? It's when a new person shows up. It's when somebody comes back. It's when you see, for the leader at practice, when they see you do something that you couldn't do before, right? So even when you're not the leader or you're not, you're maybe not the person that's like the rah-rah person, you don't have to, maybe you're on the quieter side. You're still able to lift people just by being there and doing your hardest. Man, there is nothing more motivating than seeing somebody do their hard, knowing that they're going to have a hard time doing it and they're just struggling to get there. I mean, that's motivating to the people that are training you. That's motivating to those motivators for everybody else that practice. So just be aware that it's an infection that can run rampant in your practice and make it a wonderful practice. And but we just have to try and make sure that we keep the self-talk down. Right. I mean, and it's fun because we talk about this all the time. I'm gonna pop this up to see if it can add it here. There we go. So, this meme runs around the kind of the everywhere, all the martial arts scenes, lots of sports scenes, but it's all about don't speak negative about yourself. So this is all internal bad self-talk to yourself. This talks about
the text is pretty small, so go ahead and read it. Go ahead and read it for people listening.
Don't speak negative about yourself. Even as we joke, your body doesn't know the difference. Words are energy and cast spells. That's why it's called spelling. Change the way you speak about yourself and you can change your life. Man, that is a big sentence right there. What you're not changing, you're also choosing. So, I mean, this is, I guess we sometimes just pass through this, but you have to read into this. And this is really a thing. We find ourselves, we're all going to find ourselves in times that, maybe we, maybe we are having a bad day, and it's okay. Right. Give yourself that space to have a bad day. And, the trick is, if you're having a point where the day is so bad that you're not going to get past it, and maybe maybe you use fight practice. I use fight practice all the time to put it out of my mind. I got 3-hour block. I don't think of anything outside that world. Right? Not always easy for everybody. Right? I'm Sadb, you struggle with leaving everything behind, right?
Yes.
A lot of people do.
I do not compartmentalize. It is not a thing. So I have to work around that. So I don't necessarily forget about everything else. I don't, dissociate from the rest of the world. But for me, it's been more of the way Brannos has described before, the difference between, meditation as there's no thoughts and your mind is empty versus meditation as you let the thoughts come and then you just let them keep going instead of focusing on them. And I have to do more of that version where we're doing fighting now. Here's that thought about how bad work was today. And there it goes. And we're fighting now. And then, what do I need to do when I get home for dinner? And then there it goes. And we're fighting now. And it's taken a while to get around to that. But being able to sort of let it go and come recenter back on the thing we're trying to do right now helps.
No, I think that's a great explanation.
This is one of those things where meditation, at least that I'd heard about it for the longest time, and a lot of people, that's exactly what meditation is. You sit down, you close your eyes, you go home, and you're trying to clear your brain and but you're sitting still. That type of meditation never really worked for me. But martial arts to me is the moving meditation. It is it is something that you're focusing on, and this is why people will play guitar. They'll do woodworking. They'll do assembly of things. Fidget spinners are kind of a simplified version of it. Gives your brain something to do rather than just have these thoughts floating around your head, and you're picking them out and trying to put them together and that sort of thing. And so, for those people that think, well, the meditation part, I don't like that part. I'm exactly that same way. Think of it as meditation of motion. Meditation of you're getting your brain and your body to work together, focus to do one thing, and it can put off those other things for that moment. And that's where practicing not to be distracted and letting your brain carry you back to work or back to what happened earlier, but just focus on this part. That is a practice. It does take it.
I have
it takes consistent dedication.
You froze up and I started talking. I apologize. I have a real world example I want to share of like using this to save myself from going down the like brain doom hole. The last 2 tournaments that I have fought in have been the best tournament performances ever for me. And yes, a lot of that is just I've been working and my skill has improved since previous tournaments. But also a huge part of it was because these last 2 tournaments were the first time that I was able to, in between fights, sit there and go, that last fight went well, cool, and then not sit and dwell on it, or that last fight didn't go how I wanted it, and instead of continuing to think about it, just moved right along, didn't dwell on it, and therefore didn't psych myself out about who I'm fighting next, or psych myself out about how bad that fight went, or get so excited about how great that fight went that I like stopped really working and doing things. I just, yep, that fight went cool. Let it go. That fight went really bad. Oh, well, short memory, let it go. It's gone. And then so every fight I was able to just go do the fight. And yeah, suddenly out of nowhere, 2 best tournament performances yet ever for me.
I'm really glad you described it that way, because that shows me that you have practiced wielding your mind, or managing your thoughts in mind, just the same way your body has practiced with the Pell, practiced in sparring, practiced in movement with the ladder drills. Your mind, you've been doing that same thing. And that's what you just described as the perfect payoff. That's the payoff that you got from doing that mental exercise part. And that's fantastic.
Yeah, I want to jump in on that. I think, so when I don't necessarily have a positive attitude about practice, it's hard for me even putting myself in the car to drive myself over to practice. Practice starts here around 7, and at about 4 o'clock, I'm like, I'm tired. I don't want to go. It's snowing. I didn't walk the dogs yet. I gotta walk the dogs. And so I frequently almost talk myself out of going to practice before I'm even at practice. But I can, and you'd be like, well, that's kind of goofy. And it is. It's not that I'm like, I have no motivation. So what I've had to do at times is just say, I'm just going to go. I don't want to go. I'm going to go. And I turn it into a habit. And habits are things you kind of do. That's just what I do on Tuesdays. At Tuesdays, I'm going to go to practice. So to help me get into that habit, about lunchtime on Tuesdays, when I'm starting to feel a little, not so sure about tonight, I start putting on like my Zoom bang and a hoodie so they can't see me at work if I'm on a Teams call. But that way I'm already, well, I got the Zoom bang on, or I got my tights on, and they're for working out. Kind of gets me in the right mindset. And again, I'm not sitting there all Pollyanna going, oh boy, I'm, for lack of a better term, tricking my mind into being ready to go. Because if I just wait for motivation to hit me at 5:45 after I've been sitting, say, on the sofa watching, I don't know, Gilmore Girls, I'm not going to get in the car and I'm not going to go. So for myself, I recognize what I have to do. And I think it's important that everybody recognize what you have to do and find out what you need to get you going. When I was in the gym once, I saw the single most motivating thing that I've ever seen in my life. And I hold tight to that. And it says, I really regret that workout, said no one ever. And it's true. Even the worst practice. So I don't go to practice. I have a terrible practice, but I was there. Yeah. And even if I didn't get better, I didn't fall behind, if you know what I mean. As opposed to, well, I haven't gone for a month, and mysteriously I still haven't gotten better. I don't understand, as opposed to if I go for a month. And about that, I think it is super important that we feed ourselves some fucking slack. I am so damn tired of both me and my friends giving everybody else slack. Hey, wait, I had a major heart attack, and for 3 years I had to be busy not dying, and I couldn't go to practice because I was on medication, and I haven't fought for 3 years, and I'm not as good as I was. What? What? And I'm guilty. I want to be very clear about this. I'm guilty myself. I'm hideously guilty about this. up here in Ontario, we were locked down for about 18 months. The first practice back, I tore my bicep off my arm. I just got that recovered. I went to Penzic, I tore my meniscus, and I couldn't fight. So started going back to practices regularly in December after not fighting for about 3 years. And I'm really mad at myself that I'm not as good as I was 3 years ago, and I don't have the stamina. I would give everybody else the slack, and I would say, you're kidding, right? Like you're not really thinking that you could possibly be as good. But in the back of my mind, I'm saying to me, yeah, but it's okay if they get better. But for me, I'm supposed to be like Wonder Woman or something. I'm supposed to be just as good as I was 3 years ago, possibly because 3 years have passed. I'm supposed to be miraculously 3 years better, although, I've been repairing body parts. And I think people feel bad about themselves unjustifiably, and they get upset. I've had COVID and I haven't been able to breathe for 3 weeks. I still have a hard time breathing, and yet practice was difficult. And you're mad at yourself that you had a hard time at practice. And yeah, I'm looking right at you. You know who you are. I think that's really super important. So there are times when we have to be nice to ourselves as we are to others, because we are unjustifiably hard to ourselves. I think many of us put ourselves in a position where we hold ourselves to a much higher standard than we do everybody else. And that's not fair. And that is demotivating.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll get off my soapbox.
It is for somebody who's a dedicated athlete like you are, Bess. It's also demoralizing to the person who says, I'd really like to do this SCA fighting thing, but I struggle with my own motivation. I show up part of the time. I know I'll stay home or I'll skip practices because they struggle with motivation. They feel just as bad about themselves as you did about not being able to get to practice for 3 years and not being up to scratch or what you think maybe other people expect of you. They feel that same way too. And so what you've described is a trap that almost everybody has to some degree or another. Some have it to a greater degree, but I think everybody beats themselves up to some degree or other. Either I have no excuse for why I didn't come to train or come to practice or what have you. I can't do it regularly enough. Even the people with a valid excuse. This is the only time I have with my son, or I work late hours. And they think, well, maybe I shouldn't show up because I'm going to catch some crap from other people for not being dedicated enough. Or then they that's the self-talk they get into. And this is where I think that negative self-talk can take all kinds of different flavors, if you will. But the effect is the same, as it impedes you. And, you get more out of 2 practices a month than no practices a month.
Yeah.
The other piece it does is, I've been reading a book called The Art of the Impossible. And, it's all about getting into flow, and flow state is all about really, of course, the physical piece you have to do, but it's mostly mental in how you get there. And negative self-talk immediately drops you out of flow. And it makes it super difficult to ever get back into flow. And the goal of flow is to be able to come out and into flow as fast as you can, because you'll always fall out of flow. The question is how fast you can get back into flow. But they talk a lot in that book. I mean, here's an example of one. They talk mindfulness, and we'll talk a little bit about meditation in a sec, because they talk 2 different types of meditation. And I agree with you, Tristan, 100%. My meditation is out on the field. Mm-hmm. But daily gratitude is one. I found it interesting in the book. They brought it up, but they literally say, write down 10 things that you are grateful for every day. Or write down 3 things, but go into detail on 1 thing. Because what that does is it creates positive links in your brain. Mm-hmm. Because you're grateful. It doesn't mean you're grateful, you're grateful to have somebody in your life. You're grateful that, you make you have a good job and can do hobbies and have, and purchase and go travel trips or whatever. But write down what you're grateful that. Write down what you're grateful that today. Hey, I'm grateful I woke up and I had heat. if that's what you're grateful that day, then that's fine. Everybody's going to be great. But I found it interesting that, this was like one of their core concepts. Here's what you need to practice. Do this. And that's how you get into flow. It's like, huh? But I think what that's doing is it's creating a space where we can be kind to ourselves and remember what we do have.
So let me ask you a question. So tonight's all about motivation. Maybe we have some people who are listening to us and they go, you know what? I've never really had a positive attitude about my fighting. I go and I do it, and some days I'm happy and some days I'm sad. But mostly I feel like I'm not progressing as much as I would like to. What do you think? Sorry, Tris, I know I'm stealing this from you, but what do you think that what would you say to somebody who says, so this has kind of been my life up until now. How do I start changing things on a going forward basis? What do I do? How do I do this on a going forward basis? So
I think me and Tristan were talking about this before the show, actually.
Why? What a coincidence.
I know.
How about that?
So I mean, Tristan, if you want to go into it, you can. I mean,
go right ahead.
Right?
Yeah.
We were talking goals, and it's same book. They talked, and I found it interesting because we always talk about setting low goals. Right? Setting attainable goals. And that is super important because it's sooner you knock some of those things out, you can see progress. And that becomes important, is seeing progress in yourself, right? Write that down, write it in a book, go back and read it, right? But the book also talked about setting overarching goals. So literally talked about setting your life goal, and you had to, and what they talk about life goals, your purpose, right? And it's this idea that who are you and what do you want? And it's like Bess's purpose in this world is I want to save every animal I can.
You're not wrong,
right? So how do we get there, right? The next step is to set your kind of the your next stage or your medium goals. Like how can I start doing this year? I'm going to call all of these places up and see, how many shelters we have and what their troubles are. And how could I help those troubles by making it, more aware to everybody? And then your micro goals are like, all right, I'm going to go to this place and I'm going to talk with them and I'm going to see if I can help them on their websites or I can help them do their things. But you see how all these little micro goals, you make that one. And then the next thing the next one is like, I have a good web design that helped this. So I'm going to go to the next place and everybody's happy to get a new web page that's going to help them save animals. And then you have a base and you start putting that out. And at the end, Bess saves all the animals in the world. Right. But, that's a big, giant goal. There's nothing wrong with a big, giant goal. The trick is you want to set really secondary and micro goals that you can build.
So
you want those incremental victories.
So let's bring that to fighting then. If we're going to talk about micro goals, first off, hey, people who are watching us, listening to us, we're telling you a micro goal, a little goal is a justifiable or a good goal. It's okay to say, I want to learn how to do this one step or this one blow, or even just hold my sword right. That's all cool. And it could take you, if you're the weird kid in the corner, it could take you a really long time to learn how to do your goals. And that's okay. But if we bring it to fighting, for people to say, well, I want to be a good fighter, could you give some suggestions of what good micro goals might be for somebody who says, I don't really know what a micro goal is. It never occurred to me to think of a micro goal. So what could we consider, or what could we recommend as micro goals for people to think about?
Tristan, you want to jump on that grenade?
Sure. Yeah. I'd say a great first micro goal to say, I'm going to go to at least 3 practices a month or 4 practices, or set whatever number you are. I think that's the easiest thing. Even if you don't even own armor yet, I said, I'm going to get my butt in that room and I am going to be part of that group and that community. And that's going to get me going. And that's going to help me along, because then I can find mentorship. I can find the resources I need to, get the armor that I want to get, and to get, some instruction, find somebody who wants to work with me. All of those things, that's like the first rung on the ladder. Don't think so much about, okay, my overarching goal is I want to be a night caliber fighter, and then my first goal is I got to win my first tournament. Like, okay, that's a good mid-level one, right? But let's break this down into something you can say in a month, I achieved my goal. To me, that's a good one. I remember years ago, one of the first guys I met in fighting, and he, in his mind, he said, I have a solid defense. I want to have it so that it's very, very hard to hit me. For the first year, he'd get in armor and he would never even throw a blow. He would just go out and do his shield work. And sure enough, after that year, it was really, really hard to hit him. He had just said, I'm focusing on one thing. Now, I've not seen anybody else do that, of the, hundreds, if not thousands of fighters I've seen guide themselves through their training. But with that kind of a focus and that kind of a goal, say, for a year, I'm just going to practice my defense. It yielded results, and it was very, very positive results. So those are, midterm goals that you can use. And I would tend to avoid things like, have your goal be, I want to be able to beat this person who's more experienced than I am at practice. That's not a very good goal. But to say, I'm sick of sucking at eating every one of these rising snaps that somebody throws at me, I want to train to spot and deal with not getting hit in the head with a rising snap, and to figure out how to do it, or to have a mentor show you, okay, here's what you're looking for. Here's how to stop that, and work on that. You should be able to, in, what would you say, Brannos, maybe 4 or 5 practices, have a very solid defense and counter for not getting caught with a rising snap. I mean, and those are
a good teacher, right? And that you're willing to believe that you can do it.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, this is, and there's Sides pointing at herself a little bit, and I'm going to let her tell her own story.
You're right on the nose, but yeah.
So
being willing to believe you can do the thing is one of the hardest parts.
Mm-hmm.
And
by the way, that thing might also not be a physical technique. It might be, how do I get in my helm and go out there and not be afraid? How do I do that?
Fear. This actually, you're bringing this up. Fear is actually
fear and anxiety. How do I take that anxiety down, and so I can be calm? Like, that's a really great one.
Yeah, and they talk about emotions in this book, and fear is one of the big 5. Fear can stop your learning. It can stop you from getting into a good flow state. It can stop all those things. They actually literally talk a ton about trying to use fear. And this is the same thing about, there's a lot of things that go here, but look at fear as an opportunity to challenge yourself. If you're afraid to stand in front of somebody, and you find that it's, not because they hurt people all the time, or they hurt you before, or anything else, but you're just afraid because they're big. That first day you stand in front of them and block the first couple blows is the first day that you just created a whole new layer of learning for yourself. It opens you up to so much more. So fear holds you back. So you have to be, that is a big part, and that is primal. Fear is primal. Mike Tyson, he fought out of fear, right? And they talked about that. His coach talked about that. And it's a very interesting concept. But what he did is he feared that people would beat him up, rob him, kill him, right? So he used fear to become who he was. So this is, you bring up fear. It's a tool that you can use.
I want to jump in on that. I want to talk about fear and nervousness and anxiety, because I have all of those. No, but I'm using me because I don't want to say so-and-so told me the story. So I'll tell you guys about me. I used to feel that I was the only person who was anxious before tournaments. I thought I was the only person who was nervous. I'd see my friends, the Dukes and the other knights, and they all look so calm. And I'd be like, Jesus Christ, I couldn't eat breakfast this morning. My stomach was churning. And it took until just the last couple of years where I finally went, I'm going to talk about this. And a friend of mine said, yeah, Bess. And he's one of the Dukes I know who wins on a fairly regular basis. He goes, yeah, I used to throw up every morning before a tournament. And I went, you did? You always look so calm and so poised. I'd be like, in my mind, I'd be like, well, look at him. He's so calm and so poised. And I'm a nervous wreck inside. And I would feel that there's something like, what's wrong with me? Why am I not calm? Knowing that other people feel the same way you do, for me at least, makes me feel that I'm not alone, that everybody is feeling this way. So if you see people who are looking calm and you're like, well, shit, I'm nervous. I can't do this. I must not be as good as them because they're all calm and they're treating this. That's not really what's going on. I have a friend who wants to fight in Crown, and already he's got some sleepless nights going on because he's not really certain, like, well, what if this and what if that? And Crown is in spring, for God's sake, and he's already got these anxieties going on. But I know on the day that he's going to seem calm. So I think, and this is just me being the weird kid in the corner, I like knowing that I'm not alone, that if I don't have to let nervousness stop me, because we're all nervous and we're all out there doing it. So it's sort of like what Sai said. I'm nervous. We're all nervous. I'm not alone, and we can all do it. We can do it when we're nervous. And for me, I find knowing I'm not alone is a good way of developing a positive mindset. Like, look at us, we're all nervous together in a group.
I wanted to point out, because I'm sure that, I've had the same nerves that you mentioned your friend had about, okay, I know there's a big tournament coming up or where I really want to perform. When you make yourself anxious, even a little bit, way in advance, all you're doing is you're planting a seed of anxiety in the ground. And then you do it again the next time you think about it. And what happens is, by the time the day comes around, all of those seeds start to grow and now have turned into a massive anxiety that now you have to figure out how to stop. And so what I found as a way to deal with that was, that tournament's in 3 months. Why am I nervous about it right now? I'm not going to be that. I just realized when that day comes, I'm going to do what I train myself between now and then to go do. So that motivates me to now build the patterning in that I want, which is try to be relaxed, try not to be anxious, be of calm mind, and think about execution. Think about keeping my posture. Think about having my movement be good. Think about staying relaxed and fluid rather than tense and rigid or inflexible. Think about adapting my mind to have to adjust to what I'm seeing, whether it's an opponent that I've always struggled with. All right, you got to figure out how to do this. Figure out what you're going to do to win. If you stay relaxed, now you're planting the seeds of relaxation and of fluidity, not of tension and anxiety. And all that stuff, the more you put in the bank, the more it comes back later on that day. So be careful about where you put your mind leading up to something where you want to perform well. And so that's just kind of one tip of what you can do to not paint yourself into a corner of anxiety.
I know I do that. I get myself in a downward anxiety spiral. And so I have to literally say to myself, wow, I'm in this downward anxiety spiral. And so what I do is
we do it.
You can pick your own thing. I run through dog breeds. Okay, dog breeds. Bees.
Perfect.
Bulldog, bull terrier, bull mastiff.
Literally just distracting yourself.
Yeah, I'm literally trying to force my brain to not think about the thing. And I'm not going to lie. At first, it felt really stupid. Like, oh, look at me. I'm deliberately trying to not think about the thing. But then I realized I was thinking about not thinking about the thing. So at least I wasn't having anxiety. Mostly I was mocking myself because I can't change. Being stressed, as Tristan says, doesn't help me now. I can do the things I can do, but just stressing about it. What if I blow off a shot? You're not even in the tournament yet. Don't do that. Okay, dog breeds. Okay, Senjis, War's Eyes, those kinds of things. Whatever works for you to, I kind of say it, almost physically making myself not think about and getting out of a downward spiral of anxiety. It helps me not associate or have fighting and negative thoughts. Because if you know anything about psychology, you read about the stimulus and the response thing, right? Like, you think about Pavlov's dogs. A bell rang, they got food, so they learned to drool every time they heard a bell. Well, now every time I think about fighting, I have anxiety. Well, that's goofy. So I need to make.
That's your own programming. You
Yeah,
did it yourself, you know? Yeah.
yeah. So now I'm trying to break my own stupid programming. And I'd like to think that I could have done this many years ago if I thought a little more about it. But hey, it's 3 decades. I'll get there eventually.
Yeah, no, distracting yourself is legit. I was talking earlier about how my last couple of tournaments, I was able to not psych myself out between each fight. And the actual mechanic of how I did that was I gave myself about 4 seconds to be like, cool, that fight went good or bad. And then I just played a song on repeat in my head. And if I found myself starting to think about what had happened or like, who's my next fight? Ooh, that's scary. Nope, song. And literally just was going back to a song in my head and singing that instead of thinking about whatever went well or poorly. And it has been very effective so far at, just not driving down that train of thought. We just derail the train, set it over there, and go down a different set of tracks about music. So,
yeah, totally. And I think that's the key is that, again, you're not running from the fear or the anxiety of it, but you're trying to find ways to learn to deal with it. And, to tell you the truth, as you're dealing with your anxiety and focusing on something, you're actually focusing. You're actually helping yourself prepare to get into that fight.
Very much so.
Right.
A lot of fighters will use even putting their armor on as a focus of here's what I'm about to do. I'm strapping my armor on the way that I always do. That's where their mind starts to shift. So many ways to do it. Music is a great way to do it. And I'm glad you described that because there are so many ways to do it. It's good to have and to hear of the success that you had by doing those simple things. And my experience with what I've heard from people, not only my experience personally, but what I've heard from others is the fear and anxiety are so powerful. How could I, with a simple thing, deal with this incredibly powerful emotion and this overwhelming feeling? And that's the beauty of it. The small things will still take that away if you just do them and then practice them. Your performance, just like fighting, will improve the more you practice it. So I think that's a key thing of it. It may seem like a large demon, but it is very defeatable.
Totally agree.
Yeah.
I know we've been talking, and again, this I want to make sure everybody knows it's everybody backslides. So give yourself a break there. Everybody needs a day off. Give yourself a break there. Earlier, and I forget who we talked about it, but there are days that you're just stuff isn't going right and you can't get out of that mindset. Maybe it is time to take off the armor and go do something that's more enjoyable for yourself. I've seen people take off their armor because they're having a bad day and go fence. I've seen people take off their armor, having a bad day, go talk to some of the people that are sitting around and talking about positive stuff that you want to go talk about. Give yourself those times because that's recovery, right? And that's one way to help yourself recover. So just beware. We're talking a lot. There's going to be talk about grit and there's going to be talk about all of these other things when we talk fighting and learning. But this is all part of the process. We have to struggle. Everybody looks at, and we mentioned this earlier, everybody looks at struggle just like they look at stress. It's this big bad word. Oh my God, I'm struggling. Well, oh my God, if you don't struggle, you don't learn. And they proved it over and over again in schools everywhere. If you answer a question for somebody, they will never learn it. They have to struggle through that question, right? We can help them, but we can't give them the answers. We just show them how to get to the end. And that's what makes, that's what we're doing every practice is we're struggling so that we can learn. And when you find the answer, big boost of, dopamine again, and we learn it, internally and it stays with us.
Yeah, and I wanted to mention too of when do you decide, okay, I've had enough? When is it time to use, because, and I think this is a careful problem. If you give up too quickly and you say, well, my day's not going right, I'm out. You deprive yourself of the practice of at least trying to recover your mental mindset, push the anxiety aside, set aside the baggage of the day, whether it comes in with your brain or if it's just you in the, that's your opportunity to get a good rep by saying, you know what, I'm not in a great mindset right now, but I'm going to get there. I'm going to try to retain my calm or to recover my calm and my attitude. When you get to the point where you are starting into a breakdown, like you're losing your shit, you're getting really pissed off, and you're getting into that spiral where you can't recover. Anybody I think that's gone there knows exactly the feeling I'm talking about. When you maybe will get to that point where you are now making an ass of yourself, or you are being outright angry, or you are doing things you will regret. To me, that is the red flag of, okay, now it's time to set things down and go walk away. But unless you're at that point, I would say take your experience as a challenge of saying, I want to learn to overcome this exact moment right now, where it's not in the huge death spiral already. It's just starting to kind of get there. Now I need to get it back. I need to recover. In Aikido, we talk this, recover your posture. Sooner or later, somebody's going to get your posture. That's not a question. It's how quickly do you get it back once it's taken. You could say all martial arts really are the practice of trying to keep your posture and getting it back quicker than your opponent gets it.
Yep.
So don't deprive yourself of that. Know your mind and know yourself. When you start to see that happen, the earlier you can intercept it, the easier it will be to rewire and get into the zone you want to be in. The farther down it goes, the harder it will be to come back. But don't give up too soon, because that's the time where you really learn your mind. Like Brannos said, that's the rep that you get of learning to recover and getting your composure back, and not beating yourself up. This is an ongoing thing, by the way. This is not I'm going to learn this. It's not like learning simple arithmetic. I learned it once and I got it. I don't need to practice it. You will be practicing it all the time. And I think most fighters do. In fact, a vast majority of them are always struggling with these things of, how do I establish and maintain the correct mindset? How do I not distract myself, let my brain go floating off into other places, focus on what I need to do? I think it's a ultimately common thing.
I would join in with that, and I would say this doesn't just apply to fighting. If, like me, every once in a while at work you have to do presentations, technology goes wrong, something doesn't work right, and you have to learn how to adapt to, okay, I'm not going to be able to share my screen today with you, so I'm going to have to learn how to change it. I'm going to have to learn how to modify this. The person who was supposed to run this meeting, for example, isn't here, and I have to jump in and suddenly do it. So I know that we're focusing on fighting tonight, but this is a valuable life skill, learning how, when things go to shit, how to pivot.
Yep.
And take it and move it in another way. And it could be, from a coach's position as well. Sometimes we just can't do it as coaches. We're like, I can't communicate with this. So how do I pivot as a coach to help you? And that could be, I'm not saying these things right. I can't communicate to you what I'm trying to say. Let's go talk to this guy. I'll tell this other coach what I'm trying to say. I hope they'll understand and they can explain it to you in a way that you'll get. Because sometimes I just won't be able to explain things to you in a way that works for you. Sometimes you're in the corner and you can go.
Oh, I kind of lost your your voice a little bit there.
I just said that.
Better. I think you just leaned back and it muffled it. So.
Okay.
All right. So I want to jump in for a second with we all know I love discrete, achievable tasks. And so in this sense, that's going to be sort of discrete, actionable strategies, things you can do, or honestly, we're taking this from my own experience of things that Brannos assigned me and made me do that helped me develop more positivity and a better mindset. So you can do this from either end, either as the person trying to find that better mindset or as a coach for someone else helping them get there. I've got two. The first one is we eliminated "I can't" from my vocabulary at one point. I was literally not allowed to say those words. And so in my mind, in my brain, it was still this just constant negative, like, well, I can't do this, that, and the other. But out loud, I could not say that. So the only way for me to communicate that I was, struggling with something and having a problem with something was to frame it more like that. I'm having a problem with XYZ, help. Or, I haven't figured out how to do this. And as small of a change as that seems, not being able to say "I can't" out loud and having to find some other way to put it out loud slowly shifted my brain into thinking more that way. It's not "I can't do the thing," it's "I haven't figured it out," which implies I can figure it out, I just haven't.
Exactly. And it also helped me help you get through those. Because as a coach, it was like, I can't. I don't have anything to work with on that. I can't because of these things. Okay, let's work on those things.
Yeah.
Right?
It's not making sense. It's not working when I try it that way. It forced me into better communication with my coach about what was going on. And it slowly forced my brain out of just giving up.
So, Sadb, for people who are watching, how long did it take you to sort of switch from the default of "I can't" to I'm having trouble? Like, was it a month? Was it a year? Was it
being able to change the wording and say it out loud the correct way was like a practice. The actual mental shift along with it was probably months.
Okay. So
it made a difference.
So again, not an overnight thing, but something to say over and over to reinforce. Do you feel now when you're trying to learn something new, do you secretly "I can't" in your mind, or do you think of it as "I'm having difficulties"? Like, has it really and truly changed your mindset?
It has. Years later now, I do still sometimes actually say the words "I can't," but it almost never ends there. It's at least like "I can't right now," or "I can't today." Like I have made a permanent mental shift that does not allow me to say "I can't" unqualified. It's got to have a modifier that makes it a non-permanent, non-end of the sentence. And I frequently still don't say "I can't." I instead have those better, like, "I haven't figured this out. I'm struggling with this. I can't make my arm do the thing today." Like it has stuck. It's been years now, and that's just how the brain does it now.
That's good. I think in terms of the incremental improvement, and I've seen people go through something similar to this, and they shift so far that they go in, "I want to be able to do what you just did." They'll go, I want that. Show me how to do that. Show me how to get that. That's what I'm looking for. And to me, that's almost like you turn the mind into this voracious appetite that goes, it doesn't say "I can't do that." It looks at, "I'm going to get that. I'm going to be able to do that. I want to, let's do it right now. I want you to walk me through that. Do it. Let's go." And that eagerness is a coach's dream. Like, you get somebody who's that motivated and dedicated, and that's their mind is just on, it's just like, "Feed me, Seymour." Like that turns you basically into the ultimate student, to be that hungry, rather than saying "I'm this limited," to say I feed that to me. I mean, I'm going to open up my mouth. You just dump that all in there. I love coaching people that are like that. They never say I'm starving. They just say, "I want to eat it. I want to eat." Like, give it to me. So it's great to hear you've made that progress. And I've seen the people that have done that progress and have taken it and have gone to a point where they've turned around entirely that kind of the self-esteem, your brain kind of eating away. I kind of label it like a demon. It's the one that says, oh, you don't want to go to practice tonight. There's like, you can get a really, really good pizza and you could really relax on the couch and be underneath that blanket. You can be nice and warm. Why would you want to do that and get your ass bruised up for an hour and a half? You never want to believe that. Listen to that voice. It's there. It's there in your head, but it's really not you. It's something else. And you want to just shut that down. And the same thing is with the I can'ts or I'll never be able to's. That's the other one I think that's even worse than the I can't is I could never do that. I could never be that good. I could never do that, be that quick or be that agile or be that mobile or whatever. It's like it's a never thing with them. And so there's a great way to turn that around, and you can turn it around so hard that it's a power working for your positive as much as it was a power working for your negative based on just the habits you build. The habits of what you tell yourself, the habits of what you let come out of your mouth, and just the spirit behind what you want to, how you want to train, what you want to do. And I also wanted to mention that this transposes, this isn't just about fighting. This could be you getting a better job. This could be you about wanting to buy a house. This could be about you wanting to find a spouse. This could be anything, absolutely anything. All of this applies exactly the same way. How many people, motivator type people have you said, don't sit here and think, well, I've got no money. If you sit and you tell yourself that, you will be poor the rest of your life. Do the rest. I said, I'm going to get that. I'm going to be successful. I'm going to go, drive. It's the same kind of a thing. And it all starts with that internal part.
So, and again, I don't think we're talking, I think a lot of this, we're hopefully talking about some answers, and Sadb's been really great to hear how you sharing your kind of path through this. But, at no part are we saying that this doesn't happen. It does happen. And it's, in some ways, it's meant to happen. Struggle is actually meant to happen so that you can learn. Mm-hmm. And the more you do it, the more you learn, the better you become, the closer we get to our end goal in many of the books I read, the end goal is flow, or maybe the end goal is, saving every dog in the world, but if you don't struggle to get there, you never will. Right. So, we're not saying it doesn't happen. It does happen. Hopefully we're giving you ways to think about it as a productive thing instead of a negative on your life, and that you can't get through it. You can get through it. Mm-hmm. Right. And, there's a lot of people that, there's a lot of people that even lay on their deathbeds and still think and still are gracious about their life and look at things that they did instead of looking negative at, we think, oh my God, it's the end of life. Everything's negative. Well, maybe, there was a lot of positive in life before you got there. So, and we hope, and again, get used to pushing yourself and looking at that positive. You'll find more and more of it, and you'll create more and more of it.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to jump back in with the other discrete, actionable strategy for people who need that sort of specific how-to on ways to fix this mindset. And this is another one that you can use as either the person that needs more positivity or coaching someone else, because this is one that Brannos has used on me and Duke Rongvalder and any number of other people to dig us out of some of the deepest, darkest holes in our mind, like months of just thinking everything is terrible and I suck at everything and etc. And that was after every single practice, every single event, every single time I put on armor. We had to finish with, tell me 3 things that you did good today. And for a while, I couldn't come up with 3. He had to help.
And 100%. And when I helped, you were like, yes, I did that.
Yeah. And right? It forced me to, at first it was just acknowledging, like I would come up with one and be like, everything else was terrible. And you'd be like, how about this? This was good. Yeah, I guess that was good. Okay. How about this other thing? That was good. Yeah. Okay. And it trained me to identify, even if it's something really little. Sometimes it was as small as like, I didn't give up on practice today because my brain got so bad. I was still mad and angry and thought everything sucked, but I made it all the way through practice. Sometimes that was the thing. Or sometimes it's when we're not quite in that deep of a spot, it can still be something really small, like, hey, my footwork was pretty good. I didn't win a single fight at practice today, but my footwork was good, darn it. And so it forced me to be able to identify those things, because I got to the point where, because I knew at the end of practice I was going to have to tell them 3 good things, I spent all of practice trying to find 3 good things. And that'll shift your mindset.
Yep. And when I hear that, what I'm hearing is that coaching got you into thinking objectively, not of thinking, having your mind tainted over obsessing about what you did incorrectly or your frustrations. It got you into, all right, what did you objectively do well, and what did you objectively do poorly? And just to separate it in that sense, rather than having it be an emotion-based input into your thought process, like what you were grinding on.
And we talked about the things that went poorly. We didn't call it that. It's explicitly 3 things to work on.
Correct. Yep.
3 things went well, and 3 things that we need to work on.
Mm-hmm.
That tiny little change in wording, again, makes a world of difference over the course of a couple of weeks, a couple of months.
And we didn't ignore the bad things, because there are bad. There is a struggle there, and there's things that we want to know, but we look at them as opportunities, right? And we wrote them down so that we could go back and look at those opportunities. Now you go back 10 years and you're like, oh man, I struggled with that.
I'm having a bad day now, and you're like, go pull out your book and find the good things that happened. You go read those. And I do.
Yep.
I think as coaches, it behooves us when we're fighting with anybody or we're watching people. We should also be sharing with them when they do things that are right, or things that are good. Often, in everyday life, like if I'm at work, if somebody does something good, we often don't tell people the good things that they're doing in life. We usually, I'm helping you by helping you work on your weaknesses. Your strengths will carry you, but let's talk about your weaknesses. So at practice, one of the things I try hard to do is when I'm fighting with people is to say, wow, you're doing that thing well, because they may not know it. Like Sadb, you say, you struggled back in the beginning to realize X or Y was a good thing. And I think that's important that, especially as coaches, when you're working with somebody and you're saying, hey, I see you doing that thing. That's pretty awesome. 2 weeks ago, or 3 practices ago, you weren't doing that. Wow, I see that. And I think while people are learning to identify the things that they're doing well, it's nice to help them. And, and then, oh God, this does sound so Pollyanna. But if I tell you something good, and then you can, you want to share with somebody else, hey, you're doing that well. Oh God, then it's a circle of look at all the good things that we're doing. Oh my God. But you know what? What's wrong with telling people when they're doing things right? It's not a bad thing to say to people, wow, you're doing a really good job. Because so often we don't hear that. We don't hear that at home, and we scream at the other drivers as we're going to practice or whatever. It's rare that in everyday life people say to us, wow, that was really good. And this is a good concrete time when we can do it. So I guess sometimes I am a Pollyanna. Oops.
Well, there's nothing wrong with celebrating somebody achieving a victory, and witnessing when they achieve their potential, even for a moment, and do something great, and you can cheer them, because that's what we as friends and that we do with one another in a community, right? Say that was a great achievement. You really, for that moment, you knocked it out of the park. That was amazing. Like, I love seeing that. That may seem to be, we call it Pollyanna, but in my opinion, that's just showing, energy to that accomplishment. That's what we should be. that positive energy will do more than scolding somebody for saying, well, why don't you do this better? What, kind of the old school drill sergeant coach, right? That we all, know and kind of dread. And sometimes people will need that, but it can be damaging, because when the person walks away, they will hear the echoes of that scolding, and they'll start to get into that scolding of themselves when the drill instructor isn't even there, and they'll keep beating themselves up like that. And there are some personality types that flourish under that kind of pressure, that kind of oppressive, grinding, demanding pressure. But I've found that more often than not, it's as destructive that will need to be fixed later as it is beneficial. Brannos, maybe you could speak to that, because you've trained a lot of people. So.
Well, and to tell you the truth, I used to train a lot like that, and it depends on the person. And it's interesting. I found myself scolding somebody the other day, not because, they were necessarily doing something wrong, but because I know they could do it right. And it's like, I know that they do that stuff, that they just needed to really focus back at the thing. And, I even questioned myself if that was good or bad. But there is, if putting somebody in a negative place of, you can't do this is a really bad thing to do, because all you're doing is reinforcing negative talk. Now, now they're right about themselves. That's absolutely terrible. Yeah. Sometimes you have to wake people up, and they do, there's a lot of yelling and screaming in the military, right? That they're trying to get all of these people to a state of group flow, which is actually a thing. And, because in group flow, they are, there's another book written by the same person that wrote the other book. It's called Superman, but they essentially can do more and are more aware and make decision-making much faster, and that saves lives. Right. And that's where they want to be able to get them. And that's how they learn to get there. But I think in those cases, what happens is the people that don't learn that way get washed out early. And so not everybody learns the same way. Yep. And it's difficult.
It's also a training environment where they need to provide a lot of training in a very short amount of time. They do not have time to dick around. They do not have time to get to know each individual student or anything like that. It's like it goes through a cookie cutter, and they need to get results fast. So. Yeah,
I think that and you mentioned this. We really, and I guess we covered a lot of it. We covered a lot from how do you as an individual get through these things, and Sadb gave some great examples and really work things that she does. And I want to make sure, and I know Sadb's been on these episodes before. We have a neurodivergent episode and things. It's not easy for her. Her brain works very different. I read a lot of stuff on ADHD and things like that, just so I could try to figure out how to teach her better. Right. But that's just her making me better. She made me a better coach than I was probably for the last 30 years, and because and this is what really, this grinds these conversations we have out here. You have to know the person, and you have to figure out what they need at specific times. Sometimes they need a boost when they are negative. Sometimes you need to question them on their negativity, right? And make them explain it to you. Right. But that's, so, when you're trying to teach somebody, I'm going to teach you a technique, no problem. I'm not really being your coach. I'm teaching you a technique. When you're trying to be their coach, now we're really talking about coaching here, because we're talking a lot about what's happening up here and how to build that over time, right? And that is a much more difficult place to be in. And here's one thing they don't talk a lot in the neurodivergent atmosphere is, same thing, has Asperger's and things like that. They have a trouble with emotion and feeling others' emotions. So a lot of times they have no clue how another person even feels. They don't know what their words meant to that person. So you have to figure out, how that person's not being mean. They just don't understand how those words are. They're not seeing and not changing how those words felt to you. They are also some of the smartest, most intelligent people you could possibly get to in many cases. There are a lot of people. You look at, Einstein and all of these other folks, they all in the spectrum. right? And they figure about 17% of the population's in the spectrum. So one point of the spectrum or something or another. But so as a good coach, figure those things out and go read about it. I didn't know enough about it to tell Sadb to do something that maybe she could absolutely not do.
You know, I'm glad you covered that. And I think this is worth spending the last 10, 15 minutes we have in the episode is now dealing with the positive attitude of being a coach, because it will tax you and frustrate you every bit as much as fighting does, with dealing with somebody, you know, a student who's maybe struggling and you don't know how to deal with it. And you fall back maybe onto kind of yelling at him or trying to motivate him by, you know, pulling the drill sergeant card on him, or, you know, doing something dumb, not realizing, like Brannos said, about not being able to see the effect that your current instruction is having on them, and it's not going how you envision it. So, and I've run into that myself, is it creates that stress. You create the stress of, you should be better than this. You should be able to teach them. You should be able to guide them through it. And it's not happening. It's not working. What the language that I'm using, they're not resonating with. And I've gone through this as a, you know, martial art instructor as well, and have learned to use different language to describe the exact same thing, because of the, you know, one language works with one person, it resonates with them, and for somebody else, they don't get that. But if you describe it the same thing in a different way, then they resonate with it. And oh, now I get it. Now I understand what you're trying to teach me. And that ranges from the, you know, from the neurodivergent, even to just the person who relates to different analogies or different ways of describing how their body moves, or what have you. But I found that as an instructor, as a mentor and a coach, you run into those same frustrations that you do as a fighter. And it does take the same mental, okay, this is a problem I need to solve. I'm not going to just try to do it with brute force, but I'm going to try to figure this issue out and find the elegant solution to it. For those of you who are listening, not only just from my own personal development standpoint, but all right, I'm coaching somebody and I will get frustrated from time to time with, maybe it's a particular student, or maybe it's a group of people that you're having trouble guiding or mentoring. Have you all run into similar situations like that, where you've kind of hit the wall of your own teaching experience or coaching experience and had to recontrol your mind again and get it back and say, okay, we're going to change things up and let's make this effective now?
Sorry,
Part 5. Go ahead, because I know you're going to call. Go ahead.
Oh no, I'm just apologizing to you, because I'm pretty sure I did that to you.
There were times, all right. I mean, you know, it's fun, because there were times where we're like, nope, we're done today, and we just had to be done. Mm-hmm. Right. You know,
that was an advance for us, honestly, was just learning when to be like, you know what, let's stop and try again next time.
Yeah, because we're not going to agree here.
Right.
You know, and I'm going to tell you, it's not an easy way there. I mean, there's lots of tears, right? There's, you know, it's not all wonder and joy, but, you know, look what happened. Not only did Sadb become a much better fighter and get to some of those things she wanted to get to, and, you know, really getting to a place where now I can see her go into flow sometimes, and in and out of flow, and all the things come along with it. And it's amazing to see, but it's not an easy path, right? She struggled all the way there. We struggled together a lot of way there. Right. So, you know, but this isn't, and she just didn't learn to be able to do that, but she learned all along the way that the lesson about saying, I can't, that drove all the way into real life, right? All the time.
Yeah, it's like,
you know, it's all of these
helped me at work too, in my day job.
So, you know, and that's why we that's what passion's all about. You bring that passion to everything. You have your passion here, but that passion's part of your life. You're not going to hold that back. You're going to be passionate about your family. You're going to be passionate about things you do at work, and having lessons to get you there, and understanding those lessons, not just, hey, throw this and you're going to kill people. I'm not going to tell you why, I'm not going to tell you how we got there, right? And a lot of times that we see that a lot in a lot of different martial activities and really life too in some ways. But having a clear understanding and a vocabulary around what you do helps you understand and work through it when you can't. In other words, it's like, here I am, I can't, I'm having trouble throwing this blow. Here's how I throw it. You're explaining it to yourself. Am I doing this, 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 this? Oh, okay. Here's what I'm missing. But if I'm just like, throw this, and you finally get to practice to throw it, and then 3 years later you lose it, you have no clue how to even tell yourself how to get there again, because you don't really know that blow. You just knew how to physically do it, but you never explained it. That same thing happens when we're talking about how mentally we develop and try to get better at anything we do. And in this case, we're talking about our sport.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Bess, did you have a comment? Looked like you had something about the struggling with coaching or.
Oh, just because I am the weird kid in the corner, sometimes I have problems relating to, or I'll imagine something. Like somebody might call this a figure eight. I call it an infinity sign, for example. And I'm like, no, it's not an eight, because eights are two circles on top of each other. And if somebody says to me, make a figure eight, I'm like, you want me to go in two circles? So as opposed to an infinity sign. So for me, sometimes I have a hard time finding the right words. But one of the things I have done is I will say, and in fact, just last night at practice, I said to somebody, I would be really happy to work with you. And sometimes I'm not going to say something that works for you in a way, like I'll try it a couple of ways. And if none of those work, I take no offense if we go and we ask somebody else for help. Because no one person can explain everything all the time, right? So like I have a friend that describes throwing a blow as the old way of serving soup, like, I'm a waiter. And I'm like, I don't carry soup like this as a waiter. Even as a waiter, I carry it like I carry the bowl of soup by the edges and I put it down carefully. Mm-hmm. And so when I was learning how to fight, for me, that never worked. I'm like, okay. But then one day somebody said, hey, Bess, do a karate chop. And I went, hi, yeah. And they went, that's a blow. And I went, oh, I can do that. So for me, finding ways that work, sometimes I can't. And I just have to say, let's go ask somebody else and let go of ego. It's not about them. It's not about me. It's just my communication style doesn't work for you. And that's okay.
Yeah. And it doesn't mean that as a coach, you can't change your communication style.
Yeah. I'll try a couple, but at the same time, I don't want to frustrate somebody. We're all very polite. So it's like, do you understand now? No. Do you understand now? No. Do you understand now? Yes. Yes, I do. No, you don't. So rather than forcing somebody, like eventually, like, yeah, okay, I get that. When they really don't, rather than frustrating the person who I'm trying to teach, they're like, no, I don't get that. Let's go ask somebody else. And that's okay. You just.
Yeah, or find somebody else, right? Because it's the same thing. And there's nothing wrong with that either. So, my big piece is a lot of times you may end up with somebody as a coach, with somebody as a student that you can see isn't, that maybe isn't learning. They're a great student. They're disciplined. They're focused. they know what they want and all of that. But sometimes you have to develop it, right? You have to develop it's not an immediate, hey, this is if I'm training you, sometimes I can do that immediately. Here, put your hand this way. You're throwing this. This is how your connect chain works, all of those kinds of pieces. But when we get into the coaching, that's a whole different piece. And that piece is the one that we're both working on as a team.
Cool.
I think it's important too to recognize as a coach, if you're helping somebody, like that's a success for you. Like I always feel like some people think, we're a team together, we have to do this, but maybe in the old days coaches were not so sympathetic or empathetic, and maybe didn't view it as necessarily their own successes. I don't want my student to surpass the master type of thing. I would love it if you did that. You know, that would mean like, hey, look at me, I'm a great teacher. It feeds my ego that way. No, but that's an important thing. You know, if I can help you, then gosh, that's, you know, that's an important thing too. And together we can make the SCA a better and happier place. Mm-hmm. That's nice.
I've found of all the I guess the pleasure that I got out of my own success paled in comparison to seeing somebody and helping them succeed and having them jubilant over reaching at least part of their potential or fulfilling their potential and having them feel that joy of learning. To me, that was the best part of SCA fighting. But yeah, for those people that are like, wow, you know, but coaching takes me away from my own practice, you will get a lot better by doing it, and that will get your positive attitude. Kind of bring it back to the topic of the show. How do you maintain a positive attitude? If you get the appreciation and gratitude for sharing, taking your time and knowledge and sharing that with somebody and seeing them succeed, that you will get so much positive attitude from that. It's hard to measure. It's hard to describe.
Yeah.
Teaching is also a really good way to learn things.
Absolutely, it is.
Right.
And by the way, when you start doing it, you will never feel so humiliated and such an idiot for the fact that you can do something, but you can't show somebody else how to do it. That's where you will need to regain your composure.
No, you feel even worse when you tell people to do something over 30 years and then you look back and you're like, oh, I should have never taught that.
What was I doing? I don't know.
I was right. But you know what, Brannos, that's an important thing, just as a coach, to say, you know what, we've learned more now. At the time we thought this was right, but now we know more. And that's right. Okay. It's okay to change your teaching or with more knowledge. It's okay to say, I know more now.
Here I am. Be kind to yourself, right?
Yeah.
That's right.
I know better now.
Both as fighters and as coaches. So it's, like we said earlier, it applies to everything you're ever going to do. Well, this has been a great discussion, and I want to thank everybody for coming and listening to this, providing your comments in the comments section. I know we didn't touch on as many comments as we normally do, just because this is such a deep topic, but there's been some really great posts on here. So I want to thank everybody for coming and listening. I want to thank the coaches and Sadb for producing. Thank you very much, and providing such great insights to your experience with it. I think that just hearing your personal experience has probably helped a lot of people that are listening that have gone through it. I know when you spoke, I remember going through all those same things too.
Digging out.
Yeah, exactly. And so hopefully everybody gets a lot out of this. If you're listening to the recording, hope you do too. This will be up and around as long as YouTube's around, so just to store all of our episodes, and people can hopefully get in on this. So if you did not get to listen to it live but have comments, please throw some up on the SCA Coaches Corner discussion group. I know we get a lot of active discussion there. So I guess until next time, have a great couple of weeks, and we'll see you at the next show.
Before we jump, I want to make sure everybody knows next week's, because we had to delay this one a week because I really wanted to do the show, and I am super happy you guys let me do that, because I really enjoyed this show a lot. Mostly just listening aside, but got to be the proud coach sometime. So the next week is challenges and how they help training. And we got the folks that put on the Shiv Hunt and the 100-day challenge. And Sean will be talking to both of them. I think Sir Barry is on this one as well. And they're going to go through both of them and how they think, what it does to help fighters grow. So hope you guys enjoy this episode. I think it's going to be great. I always love having other people out there that are very interested in helping train and motivate people. So I think it should be a great show. So
excellent.
For everyone else, Have a wonderful night. Stay warm if you're in somewhere cold, and if you're somewhere warm, I want to go, and I'll come visit. And otherwise, we'll see you on the flip side. We'll see you in a couple weeks.
Yep. Have a good night, everybody.
Good night.
Bye.